Hello, and welcome to Resilience Radio bonus episodes. I'm your host, as usual, Irvin Eisenberg. I am owner of Resilience Occupational Therapy and creator of this show. I am diligently working on Season 2 of this show, and Season 1 has just wrapped up. I wanted to, while you wait, give you some material to listen to. So what we have is bonus questions from previous episodes. Today's bonus episode is with Michelle Acciavatti. In the main episode, she was talking about death and green burials, and in this bonus material, she's speaking of privilege and how that interplays with her work.
The cultural piece is, it's something that I'm still finding my voice around talking about, because I believe that in some ways, erase is a bit of an ableist terminology, but cultural blind spots, privilege blind spots. I have been mainly, surrounded by people that look a certain way, that have a certain background for most of my life. I was born in San Diego, so at that point, I did have a much broader experience of people that were not necessarily legal immigrants to the United States, that didn't speak English much at all, if any, who were definitely treated very poorly and treated as lesser people because of the way that they looked and they spoke. The entire economy of California basically runs on the fact that because somebody has brown skin and doesn't speak English well, you can pay them a ridiculously low wage for a job, and so we can all get our cars washed for $10. So that was something that I grew up with. But then, as my family moved to the East Coast and my parents, got more wealthy, and I grew up very privileged in an incredibly educated community, surrounded by very educated family members, educated peers, friends of my parents. I went to college, I went to graduate school. And so when I started doing death work, the women, they were all women that were my mentors and my teachers, had very similar backgrounds. And so when we were talking about death care, it never really occurred to us, that piece at the end, I'm still trying to figure out how to talk about it, but it's just this idea that we need to be aware of the fact that we're going to die is ridiculous. Now that I have this wonderful mentor, this woman, Cami Fletcher, and she's a professor, and she's a Black American. And she says, look, we don't have time for that. We're in the middle of this whole movement of just saying our lives matter. And this comes from this place of knowing full well that, you are disproportionately likely to die suddenly and unexpectedly, perhaps violently and traumatically, when you leave your house, just because you have Black skin. And so this idea that we're sitting around saying, well, and we need to come into our relationship with our mortality so we can understand how we really want to live our lives is an incredibly privileged position. And it's new to me because it wasn't until recently that I had people in my community that showed me that, I'd had these blind spots that were built up because I'd never had that challenged by people. Because everyone else had those same privileged blind spots. So we were just reinforcing. It didn't come from a malicious place in any way, but it just came from a place that everybody was reinforced with this idea that, and the same thing with green burial too, is that green burial is going to look a certain way, but there's almost nothing in green burial that is out of keeping with Orthodox Jewish burial or Muslim burial, or even people that stick to very strict early Christian methods of burial. And yet within the greater green burial mainstream movement, we don't talk about whether or not Jewish burial or Muslim burial or traditional Christian burial is green burial. There's just not a lot of, because again, that hasn't come up. Nobody said, well, what's the difference? And that was this great opportunity I had working with the Jewish community of Greater Stowe, who was adding a green burial section to their green burial cemetery, and learning so much about some of the ways that I talked about green burial and what that might feel like to talk about not having a marker. And the rabbi kind of looking at me and saying, you realize that is maybe not going to go over so well with a lot of people. And it's like, right. Or even, that's been brought up to me with Black Americans too, the idea that, we're going to bring your body out to the woods and we're going to bury it in the woods, and we're going to have a natural stone or no marker at all. Right. And having people look at me and say, you know, because there are people whose ancestors that were buried in that way without markers, who were discarded, you know, whether they're Armenian or Black or Jewish, or just so many other people that have had this experience, this cultural experience, persecuted for that reason, buried and discarded. And to then start to think about, how do I talk about green burial in a way that acknowledges that, no, we are not discarding your body. We are honoring your body. We are returning it to the earth. And we are going to do so in a way that feels safe, whatever your cultural history, religious background is. And, you know, it's been just a tremendous wake up call. And it's been something that's like very uncomfortable and very necessary for me to learn to talk about.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this bonus material. If so, share it with a friend and subscribe via the podcatcher of your choice. While you're there, you can always leave a 5-star review, and that really does help out quite a bit. You've been listening to Resilience Radio bonus material. Take care.